Good afternoon. It's Kent Mulgad along with Jim Check at KelownaNow, and we're joined by Stephen Jones from Flair Airlines, an airline that claims it can disrupt the monopolistic activities of the mainstream airlines and change the way we fly to get more of us in the air. So, Jim, what's your first question for Steve?
You're the CEO of Flair Airlines. How long have you been CEO? And maybe just give us a little background on your background.
Yeah, sure. As you can tell, maybe by the accent, I'm not from Canada originally. I'm from New Zealand. I grew up in the far north of the North Island, but spent a long time living around the world. And I joined Flair in October of 2020. So kind of deep COVID times, moved back to Vancouver. I lived here for 4 years in Vancouver previously, but and really loved this part of the world. And so it was a pleasure to come back. So joined in October 2020, so just gone 3 and a bit years now.
So we've seen a few airlines come in with the posture that they're going to be disruptive, these ultra low fare airlines. How is Flair going to make this work?
Yeah, so I think when you look back at the history of those that have claimed to be ULCCs or LCCs and disruptors, actually none of them were executing very well. I think there have been lots of people have had an idea about what an LCC is, but actually it's an easy concept to think of and to talk about. It's a really hard concept to actually do. And so I was fortunate enough to immediately prior to coming to Flair, spent 3 years with Wizz Airlines in Europe. And Wizz is one of the best airlines in the world in the ULCC space. You know, it's an absolutely pure ultra low cost carrier. And on the basis of that sort of success, it's grown to be now 180 aircraft. So I know what the model looks like. I think what a lot of others have done is kind of drift off and they chase revenue at the expense of cost. And so for me, it's all about the purity of sticking to the well-proven ULCC model.
So you're a low-cost carrier. Is it focused mainly in Western Canada right now, or where are you focused?
No, we're spread right across the country. We've got something like 25 different airports that we serve here in Canada. We serve another 11 in the US. We've got 4 down in Mexico. We're just opening up the Caribbean with Punta Cana and Kingston as well. So we're really spread across Canada from Victoria in the west out to Deer Lake in the far east, and pretty much every significant city in between.
I've flown Flair a few times. And is your fleet mainly the new, I think I was flying on a 737 MAX. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is part of the model of ULCCs is a modern, efficient fleet because they burn less gas, they give less emissions. And so that's the lowest cost approach. So we've got 20 aircraft in total in our fleet. 18 are the Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft, and 2 of them are the older 737 NG aircraft or 800s. They've been around from a previous incarnation of Flair.
So if someone goes to book on Flair Airlines, what are they going to see about rates? How does it work? Most low-cost airlines tend to offer a very low-price base fare with additions to that for anything you want to add. Is that how it works for Flair?
Yeah, so the core of a ULCC is, I think, sits on 2 principles. The first one is efficiency, and so having a very efficient business, so no waste means there's no extra cost, and so you can offer low fares as the headline fare. And the second pillar is choice. So we allow people to choose the products that they want. If you want to just come on, get on a seat, you bring a small bag, then you can do that, and it'll be the lowest cost that you could possibly get. If you want to make choices around adding extra bags, choosing a seat, priority boarding, insurance, flexibility, all of those are choices. And I think this is the beauty of the model is the previous world of airlines is everyone assumed that one size fits all. Okay, here's your bundle. It's called economy class, and you get a sort of tasteless meal, and you get to take a bag, and whether you needed it or not, and you get all these things that you may or may not want. ULCCs strip all that back. They bring it down to the core, which is a seat to get you from A to B safely on time, and then everything else is a choice.
Will you add flavor to the meals or just skip the meals altogether on Flair?
Oh no, we sell some wonderful meals. We've got a great onboard sales offering from tasty Mother's Pizzas in there. We've got some beautiful local beers, local product, but it's a choice. You don't want it, don't buy it. But if you do, we've got it there on sale for you at a reasonable price.
We're going to bring it back to Kelowna a little bit. I've used Flair quite a bit to fly to Calgary. I mean, that's a pretty good route, I think. I haven't seen like flights from Kelowna. Or do you have to connect if you want to go to Vegas or something like that right now? Kelowna, is it Flair just flying Kelowna, Calgary, Kelowna, Vancouver?
No, at the moment we fly Edmonton and Vancouver.
Okay.
But on May the 6th, we open that up and add that. We had direct flights into Toronto 3 times a week.
Oh,
and
wow.
then from June the 25th, we go back into Calgary at 4 times a week. So that'll be the 4 destinations there. But yes, if you wanted to go to somewhere we don't serve, then you need to make a connection somewhere.
One of the things, I mean, what I did notice flying Flair was the planes were like brand new, and you could tell that the planes were new, and it was very nice. I did notice that the crews are obviously new as well. And I think I had one experience where I guess is getting enough crews right now for all the planes, because I think we had a delay because we didn't have, I think one crew went overtime or something like that, and they couldn't fly again.
Yeah, so we don't have any trouble recruiting crew. There's people queuing up to come and join and go fly. I think it's one of those jobs that's always got a level of attraction for people, is the concept of flying around. But we have, I mean, and I think this is true for many industries in a post-COVID world, is actually bringing back that level of experience into the business. And particularly when you're a young airline and growing quickly, by definition, everyone has a relatively limited amount of experience on the plane relative to an airline where you've got people that have been serving, for 30 years. And so by definition, our crew are relatively new, but we really love our crew. We've got some wonderful, engaged people from all walks of life. They're not all, straight out of school or anything. In fact, very few are. We have people that come and join us in their 50s and 60s, and because they've always wanted to go flying. And so it's a privilege to have them join us as well.
So yeah, you talked about price differentiating itself from other airlines in terms of having this choice element where your ticket price goes up. What else? When you say that this is disrupting the monopolistic tendencies of this industry, what else might people see that's different here?
So, price is the start point, because I think Canadians have been held hostage by the duopoly of big air for too long. Been paying too much for too long, and for nearly 20 years, you effectively had this duopoly of the two big guys. So we come in, and instead of having to pay $800 to fly for 2 hours, you can do that for $49 or $100 if you get the right ticket at the right time. And so the start point is low costs, which allow us to offer low fares. That's disruptive. We also start to do a lot more point-to-point flying to places that others might not serve. A lot of the big carriers have been pulling out of some of the regions and withdrawing service as they center in on, one of them on the east and the other on the west, and center around those hubs. So we'll start to do some direct flying. So, for example, in the weekend, we launched a flight from St. John in New Brunswick direct down into Orlando. There was no one else flying that direct route. You had to go through Toronto or some other place to get there. So it's those kinds of connections that also disrupt the industry.
When you say green, you made, I think the press release stated that one of the greenest airlines. What makes it green? Is it just that they're the newer jets, or?
I think there are a number of things. The new jets obviously burn less fuel. The second point in that equation is that we have an all-economy configuration, and so we get the maximum number of seats on the aircraft for that amount of fuel burned. And then we sell to a very high load factor. So on average, from April till October, we're at 90% of all our seats were sold. And so you're not flying around a whole lot of empty seats as well. So the efficiency of the fuel burned, when you think about it on a per passenger mile flown or kilometre flown, is as efficient as it can be. So that's the start point for it. And of course, sustainability is more than just about environmental. It's also about the social, economic things. And we've got some great stories of the way that we are triggering economic growth around Canada through the way that we're connecting new communities.
So the accountant has a question then. So if you're flying at 90% capacity, I'm not sure if you'll share the number with us. What does that mean for that flight? And then versus, say, a WestJet or an Air Canada flying at 50% capacity and having, or do they have standards that they fly at and what that plane is worth for revenue?
Yeah, so you hit on a really good point, and this is again one of the philosophies of being a really good ultra low cost carrier. We have a philosophy that we called, and sounds like jargon, load factor active, yield passive. And I was to explain what that means in simple terms. It means that we target 90% load on every flight, and we do that by letting our prices float. If it's booking too fast, the prices will go up. If it's not booking fast enough, the prices will come down. So the most important thing for us is load factor, and the second order for that is the ticket price. The reason that makes sense for us is because we do have our choice model, and so while we get a good chunk of our revenue from the ticket price, we also get a really good chunk from the ancillary products that we sell to people. So we would rather have a full flight that we could sell our extra products to the people on board, either ahead of the flight or on the flight, rather than operating at a 70% full flight and at higher ticket prices and not sell people anything else. So it's a different mindset.
So opening up the wallet a little bit more once they're kind of like decided that they're going to fly Flair, and helping them make some choices that actually help you guys fly profitably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll put a great headline price out there, which is good, and then people make their choices, either at the time that they're booking or between the booking time and the flight, or as you say, even on the flight itself with our buy on board product. So it's fill the aircraft up and then offer choices to customers.
Are you guys utilizing AI at all or something like that? Or like, how's your pricing work? Is that generated by some type of computer model or?
Yeah, absolutely, actually. And we've just now completed the implementation of a whole new revenue management system, which really does use AI to sense demand on different flights. And that really starts to set the prices. And our analysts are really just looking for the exceptions. So is there a surge in demand that's coming from somewhere? What's driving it? And so AI helps us take the humans out of that equation, get the pricing right, and our team are really just looking for the exceptions now.
It's kind of like hotel bookings though too, right? Hotels kind of use a similar type model, right? So
yeah, the whole revenue management. In fact, the head of our revenue management team came from the hotel industry.
Well, there you go. You had a question, Kay?
Well, I was just wondering if as you're if everything goes well and Flair's popularity increases, does that mean that the cost of a flight just sort of increases along with it as that demand increases?
Like we've seen with WestJet.
I mean, this is what happens. You get an airline coming in as the lowest, and they'll increase a little bit as long as they're still the lowest, right?
Yeah. So on any given flight, it's always best to book early because as we get closest to the day of travel, the ticket is naturally going to be more expensive. But then if you think about it at a business level and how we want to grow the business, I would rather grow faster at a reasonable margin than grow slowly at a high margin. One of the things that we need is economies of scale. So we're still a relatively small airline relative to airlines around the world and certainly our competitors. So growth at a reasonable margin rather than let's crank as much as I can out of each flight is the philosophy of the business.
And what about legroom spaciousness? Is it about the same as what we would experience in one of the
the other guys?
Yeah, the other guys,
absolutely.
the duality or something. Yeah.
If you're in one of our flights, you will experience it's exactly the same aircraft that the other two operate. They both operate 737 Maxes. The legroom is the same. We have the slimline seats, and so actually it's a pretty comfortable ride. I fly on us a lot. And admittedly, I book the overwing seat because I think it's a great place to be at a decent price.
So
But
Air
the
Canada
actual
has obviously classes on their some of their airlines, and so does WestJet has a business or premium class. And I haven't seen that on the Flair flights I've been on. Is that something Flair has or is looking to add?
No, we'll never do that.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
never do that. So our whole thing is keep it simple. Everyone's in first class on Flair, so we just put them all in as many seats as possible, and then sell those seats. And so, uh, and it's for the simplicity of the business model. It's also about who are we actually attracting. You know, we're the airline for all Canadians, and most Canadians can't afford to fly in business class. Most Canadians actually couldn't afford to fly at all before Flair came along. So we want to make it affordable for all. The other thing with business class, of course, is that it uses up a lot of room. And if you go back to your question around the green economics of this, the biggest offenders in an environmental sense are the people sitting up in business class because they're taking up all this room for the same amount of gas. You know, I could fit two other people in the same room that they're taking up, and so they've actually got twice the environmental footprint than a Flair passenger.
So if you take out the business class, you're actually getting more seats on the aircraft.
Yeah, we've got 189 seats on every aircraft. It's really good.
So I got a tough question for you, and one that kind of drives a lot of people nuts. It's luggage, right? Like the luggage that we want to take, and then you give the one free bag, and of course people make that bag bigger and bigger, and then they have the personal bag, and then the other bag, and then sometimes you see people coming down the aisle, and it looks like they're towing like half their belongings with them, and like sometimes on a flight, it was a WestJet flight. The people I was sitting up front. I like to sit up front because this is where I like to sit. And then they had to move his bags, and they moved it back to the middle of the plane because it was so full of all the overhead compartments were so full. So he got quite upset because when the flight, disembarked, he had to wait for the whole flight to get off before he could go get his bag, right?
Yeah.
And he wasn't
Poor
pleasant
man.
about it.
Poor man.
But I'm just, how is Flair addressing that issue so that we don't have all this kind of luggage stress? I know lots of people try to get on the plane first, so they make sure they put all their luggage on.
Yeah, and I think in some ways Canada is still on a learning journey in the airline luggage world. If I was to take that same experience in Europe, people know that they can't take a bag that's bigger than what the sizer is. And if you look at people lining up for Wizz Air or Ryanair or EasyJet or anything, they've got bags that fit in the thing. There's no question because they know that they'll be caught at the gate at boarding. And so we actually have become a lot more, what's the right word?
Diligent?
Some would say harsh. I would say, we're forcing compliance with our rules at the moment. So people, as you say, they like to try and test the rules, and I'll just shove this in there and that in there, and I'll carry this one over my bag. And so we've actually got sizes at the gate, and we've got our gate staff instructed to tell people to put their bags in the sizer. If it doesn't fit, then you either have to pay for the next level up, or it'll go into check luggage. And so we make the rules really clear ahead of time, and this is one of the things about low-cost travel is it does come with some rules and some trade-offs. And so we make the rules really clear when you're booking. We send you advanced emails, texts, just to say, be careful, this is the rule. And so when you get to the gate, if you try and push the rules, our people are instructed to say, that's not okay.
Hey, could I phone Flair Airlines and a real person will answer? How does it work there?
Yeah, so we have a mixture. We definitely have in-person call centres. So you can do that to book, you can do that to change. There are fees involved at different points depending on what you're trying to do. We also have increasingly reliant, and touched on AI earlier, a better chat systems as well. No, we're not there yet. We want to get better. If I think about an Uber or someone like that, it's very difficult to actually talk to a person, mostly because their online product is so good. And so we want to get to the point where our online resolution of customer issues is the dominant channel for resolving it.
We've got you here, I want to just be self-indulgent and ask the one question that has occurred to me when I'm waiting to board my aircraft all the time. And maybe since you don't have a business class, I might hear the answer I want to hear. When they go to board an aircraft, why do they always put passengers in the front on first so that the passengers that want to get to the back seats have to trip over their legs and luggage to get there? Why not start loading the rear seat and move to the front? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Look, this is one of the great questions of the airline industry is what's the most efficient boarding patterns? And firstly, we would like to do dual boarding, and Kelowna is a great place where we could.
I've seen that lots. I like that.
Yeah, and that's efficient. That is probably the most efficient. But I think that there's PhD studies done on whether it's to do window, middle, aisle, or front, back, front.
There's more science than I thought here, I guess.
Yeah. And chaos theory seems to be the best answer. It's just those that bought priority boarding get to go first and get settled, and then everyone else is just, let's have a go.
I did notice tech coming into the airport. So when I just went to CES in Las Vegas, and
no one knows what that spells, Jim. CES.
The Consumer Electronics Show.
Thanks.
And anyway, so when I was coming back, coming back, they take your picture at the border crossing, and then the airline doesn't even look at your passport anymore because they just match the picture as you're walking on. So it made boarding a lot faster instead of like all that stopping, checking the photo and the ticket and all that. It was all predetermined or pre-checked at once, right? So, or was that I don't know, it was checked a couple times. I think it was right at the check-in. What's that?
I had that going through the border recently going into the US, and actually they didn't even ask to look at my passport. They just scanned the face and, okay, Mr. Jones, welcome into the United States.
Yeah, so I think that'll help even, because there is a bit of sometimes people don't have the right thing or they don't have it out or what have you. And I have flown Flair a number of times for sure, and my family has as well. And one of the things for sure is the low cost is just, like sometimes it's hard to believe, like $49 to go to Calgary. You can't even drive a car to Calgary for $49, right? So it doesn't make much sense, right?
You get to Revelstoke.
But I mean, that's great. Now, hopefully you guys can keep that up. And I do, like I said, I did have one hiccup with Flair, but I guess you're saying you're having 98% of your flights arriving on time?
98.6% was our completion rate. So the number of flights
not
that
the
we
timing.
actually flew versus our completion.
Okay.
We were 68% on-time performance, which is arriving within 15 minutes, which was the second best in all in Canada, and our completion rate was the best. Our load factor is the best.
I was going to say with Canadian weather, that's a tough one, right? Like
it is.
Like de-icing and all that other stuff too.
Do you expect your presence in the airline market to bring down the cost of tickets on other airlines?
Oh, it already has. We have this thing we call the Flair effect, which means that the benefit of having Flair in the market is not just because people can get on a Flair aircraft and fly cheaply. It's because everyone else around us needs to adjust their pricing to match our pricing. And so we pull down prices across the board. And so we've estimated that in 2023, we saved Canadians $350 million and $415 million in savings up until to today, sort of collectively. So, yeah, absolutely. The Flair effect, we see it. You go into a market and you can track everyone else's fares. They used to be sitting way up here, and now all of a sudden they sit right on top of us up until pretty close to the day of travel. So
I have a few friends
the Flair effect is real.
That believe they're smarter than your AI. They say, well, booking out in advance obviously is the best way to get a good flight. But they're saying if you wait till the day of, if there's extra seats, is that like, when they used to do the old standby and stuff like that, is the flights kind of like go up and then back down if the flight hasn't sold out kind of thing? Or
no, I wouldn't rely on that. No, our models are really just all geared to making sure we fill the aircraft in as you get closer and closer. So we'll be filling it, 2 weeks out, 10 days out. We're filling it up, and so you might get lucky to get a decent seat, but more than likely you're going to pay top dollar if you're there.
So when does Kelowna get a Las Vegas flight?
I'll just have to take the Fifth Amendment on that one.
Yeah. I remember going to a big splashy announcement of Lynx here, a very similar kind of business model it sounded like, and I don't know, we don't hear much from them now. What's the biggest pitfall that you could face? What could go wrong with your plan?
So the biggest pitfall, I guess, is going to be just getting Canadians to move to a much more spontaneous way of traveling. Now, I think Canadians have been trained through decades of this, I'm going to call it abuse, of the market, that actually air travel is expensive and you have to plan, months ahead and save for your ticket. So I think it's actually just that educating of the Canadian public around the spontaneity of travel and what a good thing that is, and getting people to take 3, 4, 5 trips a year instead of the one that they save up for. So that's a big part of it.
I know that my frequency to Calgary increased because of Flair, for sure. Like there was enough, like it just made sense to go lots of times, right?
Spontaneous, but 2 weeks ahead type of spontaneous.
No, I mean, I'd say 3 days, 4 days, right? So, I mean, there's still some decent prices there. But again, I think that if you had a Vegas flight, you might get some more spontaneous. Kenton will be the guy. We'll go on there for the first one for you there. I think we've taken lots of your time, and we're very appreciative of your time, and we hope to have you back again. When you do the Las Vegas announcement, Kelowna Las Vegas, let's do another live stream.
Let's do that.
All right.
Great talking to you. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye now.